Continuing on with Three Stones. I was about to sort of do some cleaning up off camera, and then I decided, oh heck, let's just be a little bit more complete about what I'm doing. First of all, when I say cleaning up, mostly just erasing back a lot of the construction marks that I've been making. Some of them will certainly stick around, some I'll want to reinforce, but just sort of making it so that I can tell a little bit more about what the heck I'm doing. So something like that. Not, anyways. I'm gonna but I yeah, I want to make sure I still do have reference. Started sketching in so much I was kind of getting lost on what was what. There's the top of that. The top of that. Try to go all the way across. Weird angle, but and the bottom of this one was sort of like that. Bottom of the top. So, and these points for these guide marks, these construction marks, you'll remember I used a couple of different ways to help me find out what points like that are and what points like that are. I both used the notion of bisecting the lines and seeing how these lines line up with that middle line, bisected part of that line, and how these would relate to this bisected part. So, just a little bit of cleaning up. If you're curious more on that, go back to the previous video. So let's see. Little reinforcing, but not too much. So let's see. I'm going to start refining these shapes a little bit more, kind of using those construction lines, being more knowledgeable that I just have an overall sense of the basic proportional size of the stones. This one's gonna need some help. Well, they all need plenty of help, but let's start a little bit with the bottom. I'm kind of rounding it out. I'm not worried too much about the overlap of the middle one, but looking a little bit at things like the negative space that this line of the top and the bottom stone would make, that negative shape right there. And sure enough, there's a little bit of the middle stone that would be part of that negative shape. And then something like that. This negative shape would be not a whole lot. Kind of seeing how, as I keep learning more about it, I see how the stone sort of comes up like that a little bit and then dips back down before it goes around the right side. There is a fun little detail. It's probably a little bit too early to get to it right now, but there is a really sort of a little point right here where the stone starts angling that way. It's a bit of a apex, a bit of a precipice that I'll make sure to try to play up a little. But that's sort of a general cleaning up for that shape, that bottom stone. Let's see, this middle one, you need some help, you need lots of help. I do remember that that mark was there, so I still have that. It was sort of coming up and then really flattening out more than I have indicated here in my initial sketching. So this is just going to be a lot of really trying to follow the curve and using the negative shape to help come back and forth and refine it. So I am thinking of where the top of that is, and thinking really kind of all the way down to there, and what this shape is. looking at those kinds of shapes, because it's, even though stones are pretty darn abstract, looking at that negative shape helps inform us of the positive shape, the stones themselves. And we don't sort of have, it just gets us that much more non-focused on what we are drawing, and a little bit more, oh, okay, there's a little bit of a shape, and I can sort of follow that around and see what happens, see where it stops, see where it keeps going. One thing that is helpful is to really hone in on the axis. If you remember when we're talking about ovals, of them having and ellipses, I should say, a long axis like that and a short axis. But when we're thinking of this stone, as we're simplifying it and thinking of how it's oriented in space, it does very much helps to imagine what the axis of a simplified oval version of that stone would be, and that really helps us kind of get a good sense of how it's angled in relation to this one. Now sometimes like this, it's going to be a little bit unclear exactly what the axis is, but I would still think of the axis of this guy as pretty much horizontal, and the axis of this one is definitely angled. The axis of this, the top one, I would think of as angled as well. And that's going to help us a little bit more refining the specifics of this specific stone. You can tell I like saying stone. My sister had a fun story of being in college and friends running across stoned wheat crackers for the first time. Oh boy, they had fun with that. I digress. This is really, it's really quite straight, and I'm being sort of tempted to round it because I think a stone should be round, but I'm trying to let go of preconceived notions. It is interesting because I do feel like the whole drawing is a bit tall, because I'm feeling pretty good about the size of this stone, the middle one to the bottom one, but this top one seems smaller than I've drawn it. So let me sort of sketch in that axis to see if I can kind of get some help from that. Do think about where the line, I do try to really sort of identify where in this, as I'm outlining it, or any line really changes directions, really sort of starts, going to the upper right, and where it really starts going towards the lower right, and aligning, continuing to scan like this and determining what is up and down and what is right and left will help identify those quite a bit. Sometimes it also helps to kind of just straighten them out. I usually don't like to straighten them out too much because it can sort of lose the feel of it, so I try to keep the gestural aspect alive. This one seems like it goes out even a little bit more. So let me check out this top one and kind of think about why. Either think about why it seems off, or just confirm that it indeed is off. And there is, when I'm relating one thing to another, I will once again often use an angled line because it helps to sort of think about the angle that connects that stone and that stone. Helps to think about that angle. That would be more of an envelope approach. But I'm thinking that maybe a little bit of envelope is kind of what I need right now. It really is kind of fun to look at that negative shape right there and think about drawing that. It's a tiny little triangle, really. It's coming up and over, levels off a little bit, and then begins to head back around. I wish I could sort of teach you the secret to doing this. It really is. This is where your focused observation will come in. A couple ideas to sort of help with that. You certainly, sometimes I will sort of I might even sketch really lightly, but just air draw this particular shape. Sometimes I might sort of go to a different part of my drawing and work it out and say, what's really going on with this shape a little bit more. I'm not going to do too much of, oh look, that was off camera, but to a different part of my paper and study, do a little sidebar study and see if that can sort of help me. I mean, each one of these shapes is sort of fun enough and in themselves that you could certainly apply the same technique that we're applying this whole drawing, just to each individual stone. What's fun is also just sort of for this particular subject matter is the balancing nature of it, and I want to kind of make sure that I don't flatten things out so it still has plenty of angled, fun life in it, but not to the point where it looks like that would never stand like that. That's gonna fall. Because there is just sort of an implied, center of gravity of the whole thing. I don't want to get too into it, but back to this guy. Kind of like a heart shape. It does help to start identifying two-dimensional shapes to help just to help you relate to, when I say a heart shape, extremely simplified version of something like that. I am trying to, a very important thing is, I could say put your pencil down, but do step back, lean back, literally and figuratively, because you get so close and so focused that it's easy to get over-focused and really kind of lose track of the bigger picture of what's going on. That point was somewhere sort of in there. Trying to make sure this seems believable in its curvature, that it would be flat enough that it would balance, and that there would be enough weight over on this end. So I'm looking back and forth. A little bit more of the negative shape. It's just a little bit interesting that the negative shape, as I'm sort of reading it quickly, looks like this shape is, this negative shape is a bit is wider than it is in here. So I may try to finesse that a little bit, or I may try to let it go and say, you know what, this is how my drawing is. It's my drawing. I can do what I want. So I'm starting to really hone in on just the actual objects, and much less relying on any sort of construction marks. But they have They have served me very well. There's that still overlapping. This one is overlapping a little bit. Sort of thinking of, you know, it's funny, this is in figure drawing. It often helps to, when you're trying to relate a head to the shoulders, to imagine sort of this kind of shape where there's just a veil, like a cloak. Okay, now I'm getting out there. I don't even know if that's the right word. Imagine a British Kingdom movie with fancy capes and but thinking of something like that, sort of relating it to a little bit simpler of a shape and learning a little bit more about how if it's relating like I would like it to. It does seem close enough for me for this. I'll probably change my mind as I continue on. But I'm going to stop there and really call that the conclusion of my my block-in, my lay-in. So I'm feeling confident and comfortable with the placement, the proportion, and I'm gonna move on to the next phase of really trying to of continuing to render is what it's called, which is a giant subject, but I will be continuing on with more, and I hope you get to view and enjoy that as well.